Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Google Workspace versus Microsoft 365. My name is Esther, and I'm the Operations Manager here at RCS Professional Services. For those of you who don't yet know, RCS is an amazing IT support and cybersecurity support company. We provide IT solutions to small and medium-sized businesses all over the US. So before we get right into the topic, just a little housekeeping. You all have a little microphone button, which you could use to mute or unmute yourselves. Right now, I have you all muted just for the sake of not having too much background noise. But at any point, feel free to use the little raise hand icon to let us know that you want to speak, and I'll go ahead and unmute you, and you could let us know your questions, your comments, your feedback. We want it all. So without further ado, I present an amazing topic today called Google Workspace versus Microsoft 365. What do you need to know? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? Pros and cons of each one. And I'm super excited about this topic specifically because when was the last time you went to a webinar where there were two sort of competing companies being presented, pros and cons of each, unbiased feedback, opinions about each one? And that's really what RCS is all about. We are your technology solution, not just reactive support providers, but also proactive solution specialists. We want to be there for you, help you pick the right solutions, and just give you the most productivity possible and the best value. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce today's panelists, Jeffrey Tebele and Norman Dwek. They're going to go ahead and introduce themselves. Thank you, guys. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, welcome.
Okay, excited to be here. Thank you everyone for joining. We have a lot of people on. This is great. I always like to talk tech and, Google versus Microsoft, the age-old question, right? Which one should I get? Which one's better? Which one makes the most sense for my business? They're both stellar products, and we're going to be speaking about that today. I'm the president of RCS 20 years. And we offer solutions, as Esther said, to help technology impact your business in a positive way, in a manner that's low risk and helping you, your employees, and your company succeed. So we're excited to be here, and I'm excited to talk about this topic. Thank you.
And I am Norman Dwek. And yeah, I've been with the company forever, it seems like, and seen all kinds of different technologies happen. In fact, for us, we saw the whole Microsoft Exchange Server, then BPOS, business, what was it again, Jeff?
Business Productivity Online Suite. It was before they came up with the Office 365 name.
Right, so that was their first foray into let's put Exchange online and let's do this whole thing online. And then Google came along and they said, okay, let's see, we were born in the cloud, so let's just try to do everything in the cloud. And that really caught Microsoft by surprise. But as you can see, Microsoft has caught up, and now it's really like it's a really good fight between the two of them. As a company, we have used both Microsoft and Google. So we've been on Google Workspace, and we've also been on Office 365 / Microsoft 365. Oh, and a note about that. Microsoft, with their naming, they're just like, they're constantly renaming things. So they had BPOS, and they had Office 365. Now they're in the middle of renaming Office 365 to Microsoft 365. And they haven't quite gotten rid of the rest of their bundles and stuff. So there is a bit of mix up there, and I'm going to go into that in a bit. Yes, other than that, yeah, we're unbiased about this. We have clients on both Google and on Microsoft, and they're both fine and dandy. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. So let's talk about a business productivity suite, which is basically what these things are. So you had the history of Microsoft comes along and they make Outlook and Word and Excel and PowerPoint that all works on your computer, and that's that, right? And as I mentioned, that was cruising along, and then Google came along and said, you know what? We can do this in the cloud. And they put all of those things into the cloud. So if you had a computer with a browser, you essentially had it all by just starting up a Google account with those guys. And so what was that core suite? It's everything you're seeing here. Email, calendars, word processing, spreadsheets, presentations, notes, file hosting, because somewhere you got to host all those files somewhere, chat, video calling, meetings, stuff like that, intranet like Facebook, but for, social network like Facebook, but for your company. Intranet, oh, where is all that information kept? I can just go to the intranet and see it all. So here we are with all the core apps and what they're named on for each service. So you can see that each of them has all the core apps, like, for example, spreadsheets. Microsoft's got their Excel, Google has Sheets, presentations, PowerPoint, slides, some of the ones you might not recognize for social network down at the bottom. Microsoft bought Yammer years and years and years ago, and they've had it for the longest time actually at this point. Google took their Google Plus offering, which was their Facebook competitor, and rebranded that into Google Currents. Google again has taken Hangouts and changed that into Chat and Meet. So all of those functions are put into there. What was that?
There's a lot more than this, right? These
I'm
are
going to get to that in a bit. You're going to see a bunch of other apps that are around out there.
right.
So, okay, so let's get right into the plans and pricing. Okay, now I would put these next to each other, like Google's pricing and Microsoft's pricing, except that they don't match up well. So I'm going to go through it this way. I'm going to show you the key points, and then I'm going to get to Microsoft to show you the key points there. And as I move through this whole presentation, you're going to get an idea of what's really going on here. So Google has 4 options, actually a little more than 4, but you'll see that it's essentially whatever 4. Okay, so they've got their starter edition, which is that one all the way on the left. That's $6 a month. The thing to realize here, okay, it's the thing that's going to differentiate this for the most part between the starter and the standard is that the starter only gives you 30 gig of cloud storage, while the standard gives you 2 terabytes. The reason that's important is because your email storage, so all those emails you're getting, all those attachments, all of that, that storage is actually eats into the 30 gig. So that 30 gig includes your email storage. That's key to understand that. As you move,
I have a question just so the users may or may not know. Like, how long would you say it takes for a 30 gig mailbox to fill up in days, months, or years? Like,
that's a good question. I think it took me, and I don't even know if I ever hit the 30 gig, but it took me like 3-4 years, probably about 4 years for me to get to 30 gig. What did it take you? By the way, that screen over there is the one that the video is on. So when I turn over there, yes, that's when I'm looking at Jeff. So that's why I keep turning over there.
I think probably about the same, but the rate of acceleration these days with the size of attachments people get, I think it's just moving much quicker. But additionally, which I know you're going to get to, so that 30 gig, so that includes, like in their case, the drive storage and the photos and all that jazz, basically. So it's not just email when you're talking about size, right?
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Thanks. So starter, $6 a user a month. Standard, $12 a user a month. Then you get into Business Plus, where you have a ton more storage. So you go from 2 terabytes in standard, 5 terabytes in Business Plus. And again, that delta is another $6. So you go from $12 to $18. And another thing you get here in the Business Plus is Vault. Vault is all about data governance and e-discovery. So if you have to do any sort of holding on to information that's emails, contacts, files, whatever, that's where Vault comes in. If you ever have to do an e-discovery for some sort of lawsuit or something, that's where Vault comes in. And then you move into Enterprise, and Enterprise is actually really divided into 3 separate plans, but it's one of those call for a quote situations. You got to go to Google for that. And what you get in there is unlimited cloud storage, so you can save everything that you want. And you get Vault, you get data loss prevention, and other security features like the ability to say, I don't want that machine that's logging on from there to get onto my service. So there's all kinds of other security stuff in there and the ability to protect your data. And that's the stuff you get out of business enterprise. The pricing there, looking around the web, it looked like it was around between $10 and $30. There's like a enterprise essentials, enterprise something, and then enterprise something something, and it's like $10, $20, $30. But again, this is one of those things you get a quote directly from Google about.
Right. I mean, when you look at the price, like if I was starting a business, the first thing I would think is the $12 plan, because 30 gig is just not enough storage. But with us being in IT and seeing what companies have to go through when an e-discovery needs to take place, that vault really comes in handy. And I think we're going to do a webinar soon on data loss prevention, DLP, down there on the bottom right, which is a huge matter that companies should be aware of. Once things are on the cloud, they're very easy for employees to leak out information. And the DLP feature sets is something that some businesses really need to think about. Would you agree, Norm?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. More and more now when people are working all over the place, and who knows where your data is. You know, we're going to store all our data in the cloud. Great, you stored all your data in the cloud, but now your data is accessible from all over the place. So yeah, it's good. It's super important to, well, know where your data is and how to protect it. So let's take a look at Microsoft. So Microsoft has, I'm going to go through Microsoft 365, and I'm going to tell you about some other stuff that's going on there. So Microsoft has Business Basic, Business Standard, Business Premium. So these are their small business bundles. All of these bundles are up to 300 users. Once you go beyond 300 users, you move into the enterprise bundles. I'll get to that in a second. So let's take a look at Business Basic. This is $5 a month. This is actually, as far as like comparison to Google goes, this is kind of pretty close on some of the lower Google plans. It gives you email, that's a 50 gig mailbox. It gives you Office apps, but it gives you these Office apps in the browser. As a Microsoft user, you may be completely used to the idea of, oh, Word runs on my computer. Well, Microsoft has made it so that Word runs in a web browser. Word, Excel, PowerPoint, email, all those things run in a web browser. So that basic, you get the Office apps in the browser, but not able to install them on your computer. You get 1 terabyte.
Does it matter which browser? Can you use Safari?
Yeah, slide on that. Yes. And you can use all browsers, Chrome, Edge, Safari, and it works across all the Windows and Mac in all of those browsers with all the same functionality. So when you go from basic to standard, you go from $5 to $12.50, and the big reflection here is that instead of Office apps in the browser, you get the desktop apps. So what you're essentially paying for with that extra price is the ability to install Office apps on your computer. And then when you go from standard to premium, $12.50 to $20 per user per month, you then get mobile device management and a bunch of other security features. Yeah, so let me go.
On the better plans, it starts to get serious about security, even on both Google and Microsoft, right?
Yeah, so the thing to realize is that, and I'm going to get into this, Microsoft sells just about everything here as its own licenses, but also sells them as bundles. And what you're looking at here are the bundles. When you go from standard to premium, the big deal about premium is that in that bundle is a whole bunch of security stuff. And when I say MDM, that's the ability to manage mobile devices. Oh, there's a device out there and it's got my stuff on it. Great, I can manage that device.
That's kind of a situation where with corporations that are getting more serious about everything has to be worked on by a company issued device. And that's how we could better secure our assets, digital assets, right?
Yeah, yeah. So now, okay, so I said that these three are up to 300 users. So what happens when you go beyond that? Well, Microsoft has enterprise plans. And if I were to go into all the bundles, this would take forever. Microsoft have Office 365 plans. And they have, because I don't know, they're in the middle of renaming, but somehow those things still survive. And they're not the same as your Microsoft 365 plans. They have different stuff in them. And then they also have Microsoft 365 enterprise plans, connoted by the E in front of it. So they have Microsoft 365 E3 and E5. When you get into those guys, again, more security, the ability to use Teams as an actual phone system. You want to see how complicated it can get? It looks like this. So this is a little chart of all the features of the various Microsoft. Oh, this doesn't even have, this says the Office 365 E3 and E5, but it doesn't have Microsoft 365. Oh, here we go. Here's Microsoft 365 E3, E5. So you see there's a whole bunch of stuff there, and you can basically buy Office the way you want it. Whereas with Google, you're going to see they just sort of, listen, we've got 4 plans, take one of those 4 plans, it's going to have all the stuff. You can't buy stuff separately and stuff. But with Microsoft, the reason they're going into this idea of, oh, you can buy this separately and this separately, because they've got a whole bunch of more stuff. You know, Microsoft has things like Project and what's the desktop publishing? Oh, Publisher.
And video.
Those things. So you can buy those things separately and add them into your full package.
All right, so Microsoft makes it a little more complicated sometimes. It sounds like Google has easier licensing models.
Yes, that is definitely a plus on Google. It's much easier licensing.
But Microsoft does have more of a product portfolio. So.
Yeah, yes, there's tons and tons of stuff in there. And yeah, it is complicated because of that. So let's get into storage here. I mentioned that one of the key differences in the Google plans is storage. So if storage means something to you, if like you store a lot of stuff, then pay attention here, because as you get to the Google Workspace, the bigger plans, the more expensive plans, you get a lot more storage. So across the Microsoft 365 plans, the ones that I showed you, basic, standard, premium, you get 1 terabyte on all of those. So it's 1 terabyte, each user gets 1 terabyte in their OneDrive. So 1 terabyte of stuff in their OneDrive. Email storage, how big your email box is, does not count towards that storage. It's a totally separate thing. And for Microsoft 365, it happens to be 50 gig. If I go into that, yes, you can get licenses from Microsoft that expand that 50 gig mailbox to a 100 gig mailbox. And even more importantly, Microsoft has what's known as an unlimited expanding archive, where your mailbox can basically grow forever. It just keeps dumping the old stuff into a connected mailbox called your archive that you can search with your regular Outlook. It doesn't look any different to you as far as searching goes.
I guess if you want to use a lot of email storage, maybe Google's the way to go.
I don't know about that.
No?
Because yeah, if you have that archiving feature, that archiving feature is great.
Yeah.
And it'll hold on to whatever you want for forever. I mean, you could have 300 gig mailbox if you wanted to.
Makes sense.
But and in Outlook on desktop, Outlook in Windows, it's got a nice feature there where you can set how much email it's going to download. So you can have a 100 gig mailbox that goes back 10 years. And if you know anything about Outlook on the desktop, that sort of thing will kill Outlook. That's just way too much for Outlook to handle. But Microsoft made it so that you can, I'm going to set Outlook to only download the last year's worth of information to my desktop. And Outlook works much better. When I do a search, it'll search my desktop and my email, my mailbox on the web.
Yeah, it's nice.
As far as unlimited storage, yes, on the enterprise plans of Microsoft, you get unlimited storage. So now the difference is Google, you've got the basic plan with 30 gig. I don't know how anyone's going to survive with that. And then you got your standard, which is 2 terabytes, plus, which is 5 terabytes, and unlimited in the enterprise. So there's tons of storage there, and it's really great. I really kind of like the way Google did this they just really give you a lot of storage. Though, Jeff, have you gone near 1 terabyte of personal storage?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, you guys are saving like Word and Excel documents. You're probably never going to get close to 1 terabyte. But if you are saving like massive graphic files or movie files, we have a client that, my God, they have 54 terabytes of movie files. So if you're saving stuff like that, yeah, you're going to eat into your storage. Here we are, the Microsoft Granularity slide, which we talked about a second ago. Microsoft has a ton of licenses, tons and tons and tons of licenses. Like if you want to you want people to be able to call into your meetings on Teams, there's an audio conferencing license for that. It's like, there's a license for everything in Microsoft land. So for us, as the people who sell it, it's remarkably complicated.
It's hard to manage. It is hard to.
What was that?
No, it's hard to manage as the administrator of the tenant.
Yes.
You could get license creep, and if you're not like managing it well, and it's hard to have a standard license for every user because you don't want to spend more than you have to, but it leads to a management time drain sometimes.
Yeah, yes, we have had to audit every client at various times in the past just to make sure we had the correct licenses applied and no extra ones, and everybody had the features they needed, but no more. Yeah, it's quite a situation. So you have licenses for individual products, and then just to make it even more fun, they have bundle licenses. So something like the added security you can get with Microsoft. That license is called Enterprise Mobility and Security. They've got 2 versions of this, E3 and E5, and what these are bundles of security products. But it gets better, okay? Because E3 has Azure Active Directory P1, while E5 has Azure Active Directory P2. Each one has different security features, and those enterprise security mobility, those are the ones that are bundles. Azure AD P1, P2, those are the individual licenses. And yes, I had to explain this to a client the other day. Knowing the second I was going into it, there was no way he was going to get what I was talking about. I'm sure you guys didn't get what I was talking about.
It's hard to understand. But that being said, Microsoft does offer, just doesn't, right?
They offer what? I missed that.
Like they offer a bunch of products in Office 365 that Google doesn't even have a competing product for.
Yeah, so we're going to get to that.
Around security, which is a huge thing now with all these cyber attacks and everything you read in the paper every day. So, we're seeing a lot of value from Microsoft on that, I would say.
Yeah, so let's move on right after, and you mentioned this before, the Google licensing is not 14 million different things. It's 3-4 categories. You either, you get it and it's got a bunch of stuff in there already. So now let's talk about the ecosystem, because we keep going into that concept that, oh, there's tons of apps and stuff. And yeah, in this vein, Microsoft, Microsoft, they've been around forever and they have tons and tons of apps. Like I mentioned, Project and Publisher, and they're coming up with new apps all the time. Something like Stream. Stream is their ability to stream video within the organization. It's actually a pretty cool feature. Google doesn't have anything like this, which is surprising because they own YouTube, so I don't exactly know why they didn't quite really work that one into Google Workspace. But so they have something like that. And Microsoft is coming up with new apps all the time. So I mentioned Stream, which is a few years old now, but something like Lists, Microsoft just announced Lists. And you know what? It's actually not anything new. They're just repackaging what they already had in SharePoint forever, but they're making it that much better and easier for people to use. And these things are just coming all the time. Like here, let's go to, when I log into my Microsoft account thing, it shows me all of this as apps that are available to me. I mean, look at that. I've got Forms, Booking, Stream, Sway. I've got things I've never even heard of in here.
Yeah,
So,
they come out with so much new stuff all the time. But one thing Microsoft is not necessarily a compliment but good at is like if there's something out there in the marketplace that's really good, they're good at integrating it into their software and catching up. But like Slack was the big thing several years ago, and they just seems like they did an excellent job of taking market share away from that with Teams and, and Zoom. Now they do, meetings and all that stuff. So I think they do that a lot, like bookings. What's that booking? It's Calendly that everyone seems to be using. I think they flat out just integrated that into Office with bookings. So I feel like they're very good about releasing more value into the subscription as time goes on.
yeah, and that's the Microsoft way. Embrace and extend. They've been doing it forever, and figure out who's making something great. Make a 1.0 that has some of the features, keep extending that until you have all the features that thing has, and then start adding new features. Microsoft's classic strategy of embrace and extend, and it's worked great. And also, like, it used to be that Microsoft was, oh, we're Microsoft, there's walls around us, we only work with Microsoft and that's it. And that's not the way anymore. With Microsoft's current CEO, first thing he started doing was opening the ecosystem to everyone else and saying, oh no, that's the old Microsoft. The new Microsoft is we play well with others. So, example, here is Microsoft's App Source, which is their app store. And you can see there's just tons and tons and tons of stuff in here. Like I can do a search and there's tons of different apps and stuff that you can get to add to your Microsoft Office experience. I have this thing down here of third-party apps exclusively from Microsoft to work better on Microsoft. On this one, you're going to see this both ways. So the one I'm thinking of when I mean both ways, I mean Google has stuff that works for Google also, and just only on Google. I know like there have been various Google, Gmail like plugins over time that make Gmail a whole lot easier to use depending on what sort of things you have in your mailbox and stuff like that. On the Microsoft side, there's a product we sell called Barracuda, Total Email Protection. That has some key features that are only available for Microsoft, for Office 365. If I were to sell that same package for Gmail, there's a bunch of features in there that just simply they can't do on Gmail, which is really quite disappointing because I'm trying to sell it for Gmail also. But things like their Sentinel product, the thing that uses AI to figure out how you write emails and can see, okay, that's not the way that person writes an email. Norman writes an email in this way. That email that just went out, that doesn't look like Norman. So it's one of those things they use AI to see if email's being impersonated. That's something that Barracuda, they're a major company. They've written it only for Office 365, and that feature simply does not exist for Google. So there's a bit of stuff on both sides where something only works for one and not the other. Each company has APIs so that people can write whatever they want to, to extend the functionality of each. But yeah, that's what it is. And as far as I mentioned, Microsoft has their App Store. Well, Google has one also. No, that's not. This is not it. I lost that. What's it called? What's it called? It's called Google Workspace Marketplace. Boom. Here's Google Workspace Marketplace. You can see tons of stuff that you can add to Google Workspace.
And that's generally like another application that you're using and kind of hook it into like either Docs or Sheets or email, and same thing for Office, right? It's basically keep things tight and easy so the worker could be more efficient.
Yeah, so something that, for example, that I have for for everything. I've had it for Google and I've had it for Microsoft, is something like Grammarly. Grammarly just it's a cute little thing that checks your grammar, and it's, it's really quite helpful.
Yeah, my son uses it.
Nice. How are his papers coming along?
Great, he's getting high marks.
Nice. Okay, so I mentioned these are the apps I see when I go into Microsoft. So by comparison, this is the Google Workspace apps. You see, it's not quite as much, but there really is. There's a ton of functionality in both. And some of the things I mentioned, let's see, Forms was, oh, there's Forms on both. I feel like Google has something like Bookings, but I don't see it, so maybe they don't. Anyway, moving right along. So, okay, this is going to be key. There are a couple like really key things in this little Google Microsoft thing. One is that I mentioned that Microsoft has a ton of apps, and Google has what they have, and that's going to be something if that's important to you. I mentioned storage, also important. And then there's the idea of the apps. So if you started a business in like the 2000s and you were 20 years old, you probably chose Google. And you thought Google was super simple to use because, well, it is what it is, and it's a rather clean interface, and it's not a super ton of features that get you mixed up. But if you came from before that, you know, around the 1990s, the Microsoft apps, those things just seem so normal and intuitive and easy for you. So, and this is really like personal preference. I'm going to show you screenshots of both, but yeah, this is personal preference. I mean, when we went from Microsoft to Gmail, there was someone in our company who would not let Outlook go. Can you guess who it is? There he is.
Thanks, man.
So, yeah, like there's a person who came from an Outlook upbringing and was so used to it that, yeah, that's the way he likes to see his email.
Yeah, Google was just too messy for me. I couldn't, my OCD was kicking in. It was hard.
I have screenshots of that too. So app comparison. So Microsoft apps exist both in the browser and in the desktop. That's important to you. Having apps on the desktop, then you're going to want to go the Microsoft route. Google, everything is in the browser. And yeah, so here's kind of what it looks like. So here's Word on the web. Wait, let me show Google first. Here's Google, okay? This is Google Docs. See, pretty simple, clean interface, and that's what a lot of people like about it. This is Word on the web. So notice they really, like Microsoft, done a good job of sparing down the interface to make it, well, kind of, you know, easy to use and doesn't mix you up. This little bar right here, this is currently collapsed. Here it is, open. So let me go back, collapsed, open. See, there's a lot more stuff there. So Microsoft's gone the route over time of, yes, I want to give you all the features, but hopefully I'm going to make this simple for you to work with and not be overwhelming. So you can see how, well, Microsoft's got a ton of features, and Google doesn't have quite all those features, but all those features could lead to Microsoft feeling overwhelming and complicated at some points. And that's, again, personal preference. Yeah. Not saving, oh, this is a couple important things. I'm actually going to jump ahead, but so if you have Google and you save like a spreadsheet or something or a presentation, and you've got it on your Google Drive, and now you want to send that to somebody, and you send it to them as a Microsoft file, like an XLSX or PPTX, I think are the two things for Excel and PowerPoint. The formatting is not quite going to be what you expect. You're going to lose a bit of formatting when you go from Google to Microsoft. So that's something that might be important if you're working with clients that expect to see things in Microsoft files. Because you're going to work on it, you're going to send it to them, and they're going to say, oh, it doesn't quite look like you're expecting it to look like. one good thing that I happen to like about Google is that one of the things about you start up a Google Doc, you are automatically saving that in the cloud. You cannot screw this up because there is nowhere else to save, and by default, it's going to save it into the cloud. You do that same thing with Word on your desktop and you save it, you could easily save it to your desktop and not ever move it to the cloud. And your desktop goes and the file goes with it.
I remember one time my kid was doing like a paper, it was like in fourth grade or something. He did it in Word and he typed it, he had a whole thing. And then I don't know what happened. He closed it or restarted the computer. It was mayhem in the house. He went crazy. He lost his work. He started using Google from that day forward. It was so
brutal, brutal, brutal.
So yeah, it's a valid point. I mean, unless you're setting up your applications to save to OneDrive or SharePoint by default, when you're using that app, you do have to be a little bit more responsible about saving your work.
Yeah. And it at least tries to make it easy for you. When you go to save, it'll show you OneDrive, it'll still show you SharePoint. So it tries, but it's not automatic like Google Docs is. Okay, let's go to email. So I mentioned that whole Outlook thing. Yeah, this is like, if there's anything that polarizes people between these two camps, it's email. Some people like Outlook, some people like Gmail, some people hate, oh my God, Gmail is the only thing I like. I hate Outlook. In fact, okay, so I mentioned to you that when we went from Microsoft to Gmail, Jeff kept using his Outlook and figured out a way to get Outlook to work with his Gmail. Well, when we went from Gmail to Microsoft, one of the people here got their Outlook on the web to look like Gmail. She worked and Chloe did something amazing there. Whenever she pulls up her screen, when we're on like a meeting and she pulls up like an internal meeting and she like shares her screen and someone sees her email, even the text will say, how are you using Gmail? That's how much she liked how Gmail looks and worked so hard to make it look like Gmail. Yeah, so again, Gmail, web-based, no desktop app. Microsoft has the desktop app or it works on the web. In fact, I use the desktop app, but I happen to like the layout of the web version of Outlook better. It's just some usability that makes it just better.
What's your personal experience on the phone? Like, but I find that using we have Gmail and Outlook Office 365. I find using the Gmail app or the Outlook app is a whole lot more of an enjoyable experience for me than the Mac Mail app. I don't know. How do you see it?
Absolutely. When we were on Gmail, I use the Gmail app. When we are right now on Microsoft, I use Outlook on my phone. I don't the Mac Mail app. It's not as timely as I need it to be. It doesn't pull down emails super fast, or it's delayed, or I don't know what your experience is, but it just doesn't work as well as the native apps.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, that second point, general look and feel. Yeah, you either like the general look and feel or you don't. So if that's something that means something to you, keep that in mind. There is some functionality difference between the two. So in Gmail land, that comes from Google, those guys are built on search. So everything there is built on search. You want to make a folder, Microsoft and Google kind of put this little thing in there that they sort of made folders now. I don't know if you saw this, Jeff, but now there's actually like kind of a folder button there. But what's really going on there is Google is putting a label on that email. And that's the way things work in Google land. You put a label on an email, you don't actually file it away. And their thought is you could always search for everything. Things like in Outlook, I can sort by the sender, the subject, so I can sort by a million different, like the size of the email, whether it has attachments, I can sort by all these things. You can't do this thing in Gmail. You can't just click a button and sort, but Gmail's thought is, yeah, you can just search for it. So you search for it. But if if that's the way you look for things, like, oh, I'm going to look for everything by, I'm going to reorder my Outlook to see things by sender, yeah, and that's something that might be important to you, that you can easily do that in Outlook. And it's not the same in Gmail. And so too the other way, if you're totally, if searching's, the thing that's easy for you, and you great, I want all emails from Norman, you put that in, boom, the search comes up. Yeah, that's great if that works for you. I personally find that the Gmail search gives me better results than Outlook. What do you think, Jeff?
I think the Outlook search has traditionally been on the poorer side of things, definitely compared to Google. But I think it's improved over the last few years. I think they got better at it. I don't know if you agree or disagree. But yeah, I think Google's superior.
All right. Yeah. So here we go. This is what Outlook on the web looks like. This is not my mailbox. This is just a screenshot taken from the internet. And by comparison, this is what Gmail looks like. So it's the thing of, is this the way you like to see things? Is this sort of layout something that's good for you? On this right side, as tasks, that's actually an overlay right now. It pops off the screen after you hit the little X button over here. And then maybe you like this sort of look where it's kind of clean. You can see what's going on in each email. And again, not again, but you can edit these. You can change the way these things look. So right now you've got one line of text showing. You can have like 2 and 3 lines of text showing. You can split the screen so that you can click on an email and it shows a preview of the actual email. So there are ways to change each of these around into something that works for you. Okay, let's talk about Mac and Windows compatibility. So your first thought is, well, Google is on the web, so, well, everything's going to work in Mac and Windows. The answer is yes, everything is going to work in Mac and Windows. There is one caveat here. If you want to use any of the offline features of Google, so you can by loading a plugin to your Chrome, you can use a lot of Google Workspace things offline. That only works in Chrome. So if you're a Safari user, if you're an Edge user, it doesn't matter what, Windows, Mac, that offline stuff is not going to work for you. As long as you're in Chrome, that offline stuff is going to work for you. Mac, Windows, doesn't matter. And across all Mac, Windows, that functionality is all going to be the same. It's going to look exactly the same. It's going to be the same. It's the same page.
I guess there's one thing that's not on here, which we don't see much of in our client set, but Chromebooks. If you're gonna use a Chromebook or try and use it in your business, which I do know some people that do, we see it a lot in education. It's so tightly integrated, that hardware, with the whole Google Workspace and the authentication. So if you do go that route, that's really tight integration, and you don't even have to think what to do, right? Would you agree?
Yeah. And then so too, that goes to Android.
Right.
That tight integration there also.
Right.
So Microsoft, all of those like core apps, they make those for Mac. Obviously, the web apps are going to work on the Mac, and again, and like Jeff asked before, their web apps work across all things: Safari, Chrome, Edge, doesn't matter, Mac, Windows, it's going to work. Those desktop apps, yeah, there are them for Windows and Mac. The thing is, some of those desktop apps, the functionality isn't quite the same, as I discovered with Outlook on the Mac. And so I mentioned that feature before of Outlook where it'll only download, I can set it to only download 1 year back of email and everything else keep online for me to be able to search for my Outlook. You can't do that in Outlook for Mac. You either download your whole mailbox or you don't use Outlook for Mac. And
Right.
if you have a big mailbox, that might be a problem for you.
I guess if you have a 128 gig drive, you could run into trouble on that one, right?
Yeah. Which is actually what I had in this machine that's sitting right in front of me. Well, there's another machine sitting there. Yeah, what was I going to say about that? So, but apparently Microsoft is rewriting a number of programs, and Outlook is one of them. Outlook for Mac is one of the things they're rewriting. So let's see if that feature makes it into the next iteration.
I hope so, because we get too many tickets on that. So hopefully they do that.
Oh God, that would be great. Okay, so how about mobile compatibility? Well, this one's really kind of equal both sides. Click to add text. There's apps for each device. So on iOS and Android, there's an Outlook app, there's an Office app. There's Office app, it has Excel, Word, PowerPoint. There are separate Word, Excel, PowerPoint. These exist. These particular apps exist for all of this stuff and for each of these operating systems. So like Teams, there's a Teams app for iOS, there's a Teams app for Android. It works on your iPhone, it works on your iPad, it works on your Android device. All of these things, there's apps for all of it. And the same thing with Google. If you go to the Apple App Store on your phone and you look up Google, you could scroll forever on how many different apps there are for Google. So everything in the Google Workspace, there's an app for.
Yeah, it works pretty well.
Yeah. Security. So this is a big thing on everyone's mind at the moment. Security, like, are these things safe? I'm putting all of my stuff in Microsoft's hands. I'm putting all my stuff in Google's hands. Is it safe there? I hope it is. Well, luckily, there have been no major breaches of either of these two, which is really quite impressive because just about everything has been breached at this point. At least I did a search for it. I don't remember any breaches, and I did a search for it, and I know of any breaches. Jeff, do you know off the top of your head of any breaches of these two?
I mean, I don't know of any breaches where their data centers were compromised and data from multiple clients was stolen, let's say. But what we do see is business email compromise, and which will affect the other apps is, people's passwords are exposed on the dark web and evil actors log into their mailboxes and do evil things. So that's not the data center per se getting breached, or however you want to term it, but you could still get hacked. You do need things like MFA to protect yourself for that, and a lot of businesses don't have that set up. But so I think on this one, to feel the 100% safe that they're not going to get hacked, I think nothing's 100%, but you're pretty good there. But if you're not following best practices, an individual person can fall suspect to a hack, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that is key. Right? These guys bring a ton of security to bear, but if you don't implement security in a healthy way for each of these things, you're kind of nowhere. Like, right? Maybe Microsoft won't get breached, but you yourself might get breached. So you really need to bring all the security that not all, but bring the security that they have, bring that to bear, because that's key to your data. That's key to your data being safe, is using the security they provide. So many people start these things up and don't turn on something like MFA. You have to have MFA on. Google Workspace, they've got each of these guys has MFA. Google Workspace is very secure. If you don't turn MFA on, you're really asking to get hacked on this one. And that's not Google's fault. It's your fault for not having turned on the security features they provide. So,
Agree.
As far as the data centers go, yeah, these things are locked down. Yeah, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, they've got all kinds of acronyms and who knows what. And yeah, you can't walk into that data center for the life of you. Even if you do get access to the data center, you only get access that one time, and there's no persistent access, all kinds of things that they came up with, that your data sitting there is fine. Your files, All of that's encrypted at rest, meaning on their servers, it's encrypted. If it's moving from their server to your server, it's also encrypted. So as it's moving across the internet, it's encrypted. So all of that's encrypted. In fact, what I read, Jeff, you might find this one interesting. The way OneDrive encrypts files is it encrypts each file with a different key. I don't know how they could pull this off. I'm not even sure it's correct, but each file has a different key, which means if the key gets breached, only one file gets breached. Maybe Google does this. To me, it's like, I don't know, you have 4 bajillion keys at this point. Not exactly sure. And then you've got to, kind of encrypt those keys up. I don't know. But yeah, I did read that in passing, which I thought was incredible.
Cool.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Yes, this is great. Okay. Most important thing. Microsoft, those guys have really become super, super serious about security to the point where they've got add-on licenses. I mentioned before enterprise mobility and security, those bundles, Azure ADP1, Azure ADP3. They've got these add-on licenses which add on a ton of security, tons of security. It's great. Like things like, oh, it's looking at your logins. You logged in from New York, and then 10 minutes later you logged in from London. You can't get from New York to London in 10 minutes. There's an obvious problem with that login. They're looking at stuff like that. Not just, oh, the guy has username and password, and he's got his MFA code and he's in. No, they're taking that further. And in fact, on Google's side, remember I mentioned that they don't have like add-on licenses and stuff. You either get the right plan or you don't. In their enterprise plan, there is a bunch of added security like contextual login, which is I am not going to allow a person to log in from a certain computer in a certain place. They have that sort of thing. And that's on, that additional security is on the enterprise plans. Not to say that in like the business, what are they, business standard, whatever the lower Google plans are, not to say that those don't have security. They actually have a ton of security and it's just built in and working. But you get even more on the enterprise plans.
I think we're coming up on 3, so I don't know how many slides you have left, but do we want to see if there's any questions? Esther?
Wait, I'm just about done here.
So you had it.
Jumping in. Okay, compliance. Yes, there's HIPAA compliance. You can do all your stuff, whatever kind of company, FINRA, HIPAA, what's the PCI, all of this stuff you can do with either of these things. Just keep in mind, while all these things are scoped right, if you don't configure them right, you could be in breach. HIPAA is an easy one to be in breach of if you don't configure them correctly. There is this kind of weird thing with Google Apps in that most of the apps are HIPAA compliant, but something like Contacts isn't. I don't quite understand how that could be, but I read their scoping document and that's what it says. Okay, moving on to reliability. Which one stays up the most, right? They all advertise 99.99959 of uptime, but as anyone who works in the industry knows, they have been down, and this is a list of major downtime incidents in the last, whatever, year, 9 months or so. And so they've both gone down, and I actually, from having experienced them at the help desk, I don't think one has been better than the other on this. They've both gone down, and they've both worked like crazy to get them back up as soon as possible. There is something weird though when you look at these dates. They tend to group together, like September 28th, October 1st, October 7th. Something was going on there. March 15th, April 1st, April 27th. There was something weird. There was something weird going on there. They didn't quite get right. Same thing on the Google side. 8th and the 24th, 14th, and then boom, the 15th, it went down again. Whoa, that was a wonderful couple of days. And then here, June 8th, June 20th, June 2nd, June 28th. I don't know what goes on there, but they tend to group together. I don't know what the story about it.
They're making major changes to the platforms or.
Must be. Okay, hit me.
There you go. That was awesome, huh?
Thanks.
Yeah, way to rumble. So it's been quiet. That might just be because you're all on mute, but even if not, if you have questions, comments, feedback, tell us what you're doing. You're on Google Workspace, you're on Microsoft. We want to hear from you. Just use the little raise hand button and I will unmute you. think we have one question here. Okay, I'm going to read this one. Which of these services plays best with other services like Dropbox?
Oh, great question. Okay, so I mentioned this before that well, let me go back. They happen to both work really well with everything, and there is a reason for that. Like I said, Microsoft CEO, current CEO, first thing he started when he came aboard was we're going to play well with others, and immediately cut a deal with Dropbox, immediately cut a deal with Box. To have both of those things work well in the office sphere. So yeah, you want Dropbox to work with Office well? Yeah, it works great. You want to save something, it goes right into there. You want to go on Dropbox and edit something, you can edit a Dropbox file right onto your Office on the web. As far as Google goes, things like Dropbox, yeah, you can use Dropbox as your storage, no problem. In fact, I think we did it at one point, right?
I don't remember actually. Just what the answer to the question would be, like Dropbox on Drive.
Yeah, you can definitely leverage Dropbox as your storage. So if you want to use Gmail as your email and Dropbox as your storage, and because you're using Dropbox already, there's no reason to go away from it. You can absolutely keep doing that. So they both play well with other services around them. I happen to be using Dropbox as an example, but yeah, they both play well with a whole bunch of other services around them.
Gotcha.
Norman, looks like we have one more question. If anyone else has questions, you can also drop them in the chat. That works fine too, in the question box, and we'll see them, or we can call on you to say them. How long does Microsoft and Google retain files, and how many versions of a file are kept on each one?
Oh, okay, good. And yeah, so what are we talking about here? I make a file, like a Word file, right? And Jeff goes and edits it, and then Esther goes and edits it, and I go and edit it. Each time someone edits it, there's a new version of that file. So you can go back to an earlier version of that file. So let's say you know that a week ago that file looked fine, great. You can go back to a version from a week ago. So the question is, how many versions can I go back? Or how far back in time can I go back? There's actually no limit. The limit is based on your storage. So you can go back forever. I mean, each of those versions takes storage. So you can go back forever as long as there is the storage to support it, as long as you have a plan that has enough storage to support it. I know on Microsoft SharePoint, an administrator can say, you were only holding this many versions, and that's major versions and minor versions. So you can say, only hold on to 30 versions of a file, and then after that, you delete the oldest to get to the new, to save the newest. I don't know if Google has that where you can limit it, but they both go forever based on your storage.
Someone deletes a file 30 days, is that, I forgot what it was.
Oh, so in SharePoint, if you delete a file, it goes into the recycle bin. There's actually I think there's multiple levels of recycle bin. There's a recycle bin that any user can get to, and then there is a recycle bin that only admins can get to. And on the Google side, I can't remember how it went with files that we deleted.
We could get back to you on that.
Cool, thanks. And then we'll just one more question, Norman, as we're ending here. But what do we do if we want to move from Google Workspace to Microsoft 365? Can you help us with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've done it for ourselves, and we've done it for other companies. So yeah, if you want to do that migration, yeah, we can absolutely help you out with that. It's how does it go? Actually, most of it happens in the background. When I happen to have done ours, most of it happened in the background. It was just a, hey, we're switching over sort of thing. This is the day, this is when it's going to happen. You have to get all your ducks in a row. So you can't just flip a switch and hope for the best. And there is some pain on that day or two of cutover as you get things configured on the new systems, but it's not difficult. As long as you know what you're doing, it's not a difficult migration. We've done a ton of them, so it's something that's yeah, right up our alley at this point.
Cool, thanks. Actually, Norman, that's probably a perfect segue. If you could slide over to the next slide, actually, it has our contact information, I believe, in case anybody wants to get in touch with us or has follow-up questions or anything of that sort. That being said, unless Jeff or Norman, you have any last words, just want to thank everybody so much for coming.
Thanks, Norm. Thanks, Esther.
Thank you,
Sure.
guys. Thanks,
Jeff, I
everybody.
know you referenced our September webinar earlier, so just visit that link on the bottom, RCS on our website. There's an events page. We have all our upcoming events, including the one Jeff referenced about data on September, I believe it's 2nd or 3rd. Thank you all so much for your time and hope to see you again.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.